Welcome back. In this video, we're going to understand what is the difference between a calculated column and a measure. Okay, measures and calculated columns. We generally use measures and calculated columns to perform arithmetic operations on top of the data that we have in our model, right? Calculated columns should be created under lookup tables. Lookup tables are nothing but dimension tables, not under fact tables, as it consumes more memory. This is a very important point, okay? So however, you can create calculated columns anywhere, we have that provision. But because of certain reasons, we are not supposed, it's not a good practice to create the calculated columns on the fact tables, okay? And also measures should be used under fact tables as it doesn't use any memory. And the calculation is performed only when the measure is dragged onto the table. In fact, measure is not linked to any of the table. The underlying meaning of this statement is to make sure like we are pulling the keys, right? The KPIs that are the metrics that are available in the fact table. We are using those metrics in order to calculate the measures, right? Our KPIs are basically measures, which will be pulling the details of those KPIs. Okay. And then calculated column symbol is like this. This looks like this symbol. Please note this. And whereas measure symbol is like this. We already seen a measure, right? We have created a measure. So that looks like this. Else calculated column looks like this. All right, so let us continue with calculated column. So we shall calculate the total cost for each order. Now I'm going to create a calculated column. Let me go to sales table and click on these three dots, more options. Click on new column, which is a new calculated column. I'm going to calculate total cost calculated column example. Okay, I'm just given this name, and you can also notice the symbol which is being created. You can see this is how the calculated column looks. Let me just write the formula. The total cost calculated column is equal to order quantity times total unit cost. So I'm going to just search for order quantity multiplied by total unit cost. Okay, this is what is your total cost. Okay. And you can notice new column, calculated column has been created with this particular symbol. And also please observe the difference between a measure that we have created earlier versus the calculated column, which is now. Okay. And one more thing that you need to observe here, it is, let us go back to the table, sales table, and select the sales table. And let us try to look for total sales. Do you find any column with name total sales? You cannot find any column called total sales because a measure is not created or not part of the table. It is not created anywhere physically. Okay. Measure is not created physically. Whereas you can see total cost calculated column that we just created now is created physically and it is sitting in the table along with the other columns, right? That means it is occupying the space. It is taking the space within the same sales table. It's just like a new column that is being created with the existing columns, right? So calculated column occupies space. Calculated column is physically, created along with the other columns. And whereas measures are not stored anywhere, they are dynamically calculated on the fly when you are trying to fetch the data. What I mean is, let us duplicate this page. Let us remove all the visuals. Let me just a moment. Let me just quickly add a table and try to add some information. Let's say I'm adding a date. Again, I only want in a date format rather than hierarchical format. So I wanted to add total sales. So what happened just now is when I clicked on the total sales, in this very moment on the fly, the calculation has happened. That is the performance of the DAX, like the engine behind the Power BI desktop. There's a DAX engine, which is very fast that, as soon as you selected this total sales, the calculation has occurred within the memory, like it's almost you are not able to even you know see that. However, when you are dealing with large set of data and with bit of larger complex formulas, you could see a bit of refreshing, a few seconds before the data is loaded. But this is how the fast it is. While if you notice, I'll try to add this thing. Let me just add this total cost calculated column that I just created. Okay. So I just added this total cost calculated column. Okay. So this total cost calculated column is actually not calculated when I've dragged and dropped it. It is already calculated and it is placed in the table. So it's a pre-calculated value, just like any other value, right? So it is just pre-calculated value and it is stored in the table. All we are doing here is we are just utilizing in our table by just dragging and dropping. So there's no calculation happening here. So basically the calculated column here relies on a row context. Okay, again, one more topic, like the concept that I'm adding here is, so the calculated column is linked with a row. What I mean is 651.24, the value that you see here is a multiplication of order quantity and total unit cost. That is nothing but multiplication of order quantity 5 into 130.248, right? So that means it is related to this row between these two values, right? Because that is the formula. And the next value is related to these two. So that means every value which is calculated, right, is linked to that specific row, right? Whatever formula that you're writing here is. Okay. So the calculated column is dependent on the row. So, and it again, it is, so, sitting in the table, along with the other columns, right? So, whereas the measure, whatever fields you write, like whatever, even if you write any other formula, which is, let me just rewrite this measure. Okay. So I can rewrite this total cost in terms of measure. Okay. Let us create a new measure here. More options, create a new measure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write total cost. I'll keep it as total cost, which is a measure. We have already selected that as a measure. And for having the same multiplication formula, I need to come up with another formula here, because in DAX, especially when you are writing a measure, we have a specific dedicated formula to calculate that expression. Okay, we need to pass on the table that we are referring to. I'm referring to sales table, and my expression is going to be order quantity multiplied by total unit cost. So I'm going to just write that order quantity star and total unit cost. Okay. So what I've done here is I'm just multiplying these two using the sum x formula. So there's a predefined formula in that. So I'm taking the advantage of that and I just created this measure. So I'm just clicking on commit. However, you cannot see this total cost in the table because you are already aware of that, right? No measure will be sitting in any of this table. It is only comes up when you are dynamically calculating it. When you are pulling it to the table. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove this total sales, right? I'm going to pull in this total cost. Can you see? Both the values are one and the same. So what is the difference? This is a calculated column and this is a measure, right? The values are same. So the reason we have to go with the measure is measure do not take up any space while increasing the performance. So in the large tables or in the large data sets, when the data grows to millions of records, that time having a calculated column will impact your performance. Simply we are adding too much of data in our table, too much of load to the model, right? So whereas by using measure, what we are doing, this measure is dynamically calculating when you just use it. If you're not using it, it's just sitting like that without occupying any space. Only when you drag and drop it here, it is dynamically calculating the formula on the fly. It is giving the same result as this calculated column, right? So knowing this fact, why do you want to even use this total cost calculated column? But you don't want to use that. Rather, you wanted to stick to this measure that you can do the same job, right? So that is a real advantage of having a measure. So again, conceptually you need to understand this whatever calculated column that you create will take up some space. So then the question comes like, then what is the use of calculated column? When do we use calculated column, right?